TCI is brought to you by TaylorMade Stallions, home of astrology, Escandaria, forestry, Northern Afleet, old-fashioned, and unbridled song.
Welcome back to TCI, your inside track to the Triple Crown. Alongside Joel Cunningham, I'm John Siegel. You know, Joel, it's been an exciting Triple Crown season. You know, at the beginning of the year, we evaluate these horses, we take a look at them, and it's been really exciting to be on the right horses this year. You know, Orb we were following as an allowance winner. He wins the Derby. Oxbow is a horse we've had in our top 5. Even when it wasn't the most respected decision, he goes on, wins the Preakness. You know, but when you talk about the Belmont, and you're picking there with Palace Malice, I got to be honest, it even surprised me a little bit.
Well, Palace Malice is a horse that we've been on from the start, too. I mean, when he was a well-beaten runner-up in an allowance race at Gulfstream in his seasonal debut, we still had him in our top 10 because I really thought, when you look at that pedigree, it screamed 2 turns, and physically he's a big colt, and he showed so much brilliance as a 2-year-old at Saratoga. I mean, he went on my list early because you really like to look at those, you know, maidens from California and certainly Saratoga as 2-year-olds because you know they're running against the best. So when you have a son of Curlin out of a Royal Anthem mare, that John Frank's female family, and it certainly goes back further than Royal Anthem there, where there's plenty of stamina, John. The fact that the mare was even a stakes mare, even though it was on grass around 2 turns, and he was showing so much brilliance at 5.5 furlongs at Saratoga, you knew the talent was there, and you knew that it was very likely, based on his gait, he was going to also handle 2 turns and run to that pedigree, and we saw him do that. Now, blinkers off, which we liked him a little in the Derby. You know, we liked Oxbow a little in the Derby as well. We picked Orb. Both Oxbow, Palace Malice did not run well that day. They were up on a fast pace, but obviously Oxbow coming back in the Preakness, performing up to his capabilities that we thought he had, and then Palace Malice having that Tomlinson number. And again, I can't overemphasize. I know everybody wants to say, you know, I mentioned Tomlinson, the dosage number, dosage, smosage. I know that's sort of what Ray Pollock thought of the dosage number, but I just think it's so important, John, that you have a fresh horse and have a horse that truly has the quantitative pedigree to handle a 1.5 miles. And we saw in this race, the Belmont Stakes, even though they went 46 and change for the half mile, pretty, you know, what we thought was a pretty quick pace, Palace Malice was just off of that. Oxbow was on that pace, and they're your 1-2 finishers in here. And quite frankly, I think, even though the track was playing fast, when they made the lead at the top of the stretch of the quarter pole, you could have stopped the race right there. Because these 3-year-olds aren't really bred to excel at a 1.5 miles.
Right.
There was nobody finishing the entire stretch. I mean, it was essentially, other than Incognito maybe grinding away a little bit or really flattened out, you know, well before the 8th pole, it was basically a race to where they galloped around there from the quarter pole to the wire, and nobody was really finishing. I mean, it wasn't a dynamic stretch run.
Right.
Palace Malice just had enough stamina to put himself in the right position and carry himself from the quarter pole to the wire.
Well, I know Ray Pollock, you know, he picked on you a little bit about the dosage, but he did say that, you know, he thought it was going to be the jockey, and I got to give it to Mike Smith. I mean, everybody was very down on him. You know, it's 2 years in a row that he set very fast fractions in the Derby. You know, but he kind of explained that was the strategy, was to get Palace Malice out there, and with the blinkers on in the Derby and that sealed track, he said it's like firecrackers going off behind you. But I got to give it to him. I thought he had a brilliant ride in the Belmont, and like you said, I mean, the speed just wasn't backing up. And I got to say, Oxbow, man, what a tough horse. You know, it leads you into that question. I mean, who do you think is the top 3-year-old right now in the country?
Oxbow would be up there for me. Just so consistent. His cruising speed is what sets him apart. I mean, he's such an efficiently made horse, and it's got such an efficient gait, John. That's what really attracted us to him all along. And I really think, you know, the fact that, you know, if he can get in the correct pace scenarios to where he's not, you know, too aggressively run early in his races with other quality speed, like in the Kentucky Derby, Oxbow's cruising speed is going to take him a long way because he's going to take the lead in most of his races at the 8th pole, and you're going to have to come get him. And he has quality and that cruising speed to go with it. He's just a tough customer, John. I mean, they've really had an aggressive campaign for him all spring. He's held up through it all and proved he's a top quality colt. You'd have to have him up there. For me personally, I think Orb is a colt that, you know, still, when you look at the numbers, you assess his Derby performance, and in the spring he had, he's still on top for me. I just think that Triple Crown grind took it out of him, having to come back in 2 weeks shipping, then even coming back at a 1.5 miles, probably not bred for that type of distance. His run got flat there, and again, it was his 3rd race in 5 weeks. So Orb had excuses. I still think Orb is the fastest 3-year-old. Oxbow's certainly up there. But watch some other long shots, you know, that I think are set up for big second half of the year. Look at Power Broker. I mean, he's one example that, you know, Baffert, he's a big colt. Baffert didn't have him right for the Santa Anita Derby. He was a little ambitious trying to get him to the Kentucky Derby after he had a setback.
Right.
But now he beat older horse in Allowance of Churchill. I thought it was an easy-goer performance. He blew away a pretty good field there for a listed stake for 3-year-olds. I think Power Broker is another colt going forward in the second half of the year that's very dangerous for Bob Baffert.
Well, you mentioned, you know, the Orb being one of the fastest 3-year-olds. You know, I think it's worth mentioning what the Brisk rating was for Palace Malice with the 101 there in the Belmont. I mean, he's poised for a big year as well. We could see the Derby winner, the Preakness winner, and the Belmont winner back in the Travers, which is something we didn't have a shot of last year with all the 3-year-olds falling off. Joe, we're really poised for a huge summer.
You know, that couldn't have been better said, John. I mean, last year we were so excited about the quality of the crop and how fast they were with Bodemeister and Union Rags, and you know, obviously Painter's still racing. We're excited to see him run his 4-year-old debut this Friday. But I'll have another. All those horses never ran after the Belmont Stakes, so you know, all that hype sort of fizzled out midsummer. The difference this year is, say what you want to say about these 3-year-olds, they're going on. You know, knock on wood, they're going to be able to sustain this, hopefully, well into the summer. We're going to have rematches probably in the Haskell and the Travers. So it's a wonderful thing. Palace Malice, again, a quality colt we've always liked. Proved in the Belmont Stakes, was working so well up to that race. I think you have to have him in the mix. But again, going back to a 1.8 1/4 more of a standard distance, that's going to bring horses, again, like Orb back in the picture, coming in fresh. To me, this group is very well compared, you know, across the board. I don't really see a big standout. You know, Palace Malice can continue to develop. I think there's 4 or 5 right there, John, that are very close at the top, again, at a standard race distance, like a 1.8 1/4. So I expect a big summer between this crop.
Well, we're going to see that summer kick off this Saturday in the Pegasus Stakes. We're going to see It's My Lucky Day and Verrazano back in action. 2 horses we haven't seen since the Derby. Joe, you think this may be a big race for the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile?
I really do. I mean, when you talk about the top middle distance horses with this crop of 3-year-olds, I think most people would say It's My Lucky Day based on what he did around a mile at Gulfstream, and certainly showed his quality in the Preakness. And Verrazano, John, a horse that everybody across the board thought might have been the most talented 3-year-old, probably just didn't handle the 1 1/4 distance. It got a sloppy track in the Kentucky Derby, but now coming back at a 1 1/16 this weekend. Pay attention to that Pegasus Stakes. I know it's a prep for the Haskell, but more than that, I think going down further now as we start to look at the Breeders' Cup, those are 2 top milers from the 3-year-old crop that could be around at the end of the year and be top contenders in that dirt mile.
Well, you mentioned our switch now goes to the Breeders' Cup, and Joel, we see some horses coming back. We got Groupie Doll that, you know, she's back working. Of course, you know, we see Painter coming back.
Mucho Macho
Man. I mean, we're really poised for a great Breeders' Cup. It's very exciting. Great job on the Triple Crown. You really did a good job following these horses.
Enjoyed it. Thank
you guys for watching. Make sure you come back next week. We'll recap the Pegasus Stakes, and we'll continue our conversation on the Breeders' Cup.